I can't make the presentations today at 4, but I wanted to give an update on what I worked on today. So for background, I've been working on pedestrianized streets in Seattle. So SDOT has been closing some residential streets to give people more room for walking in the streets for social distancing. And a group called Neighborhood Greenways has proposed a 130-mile network throughout Seattle of these closures. And so I've been using AB Street, which is a traffic simulation tool, to understand these changes. So first I'll kind of describe what was working before today. So part of the proposal was to take this stretch of Lake Washington Boulevard, starting from Madison and going through the Arboretum, and just to close it to through traffic, and instead just make it available for people cycling and walking. And so that's initially kind of the edit that exists here. And so one of the things I've been working on is to understand the impacts of that change on other traffic. So notably, you can see here, this display shows what roads are being used more or less versus before the change. And so originally, a lot of drivers would take Lake Washington Boulevard all the way up or all the way south. But because of this change, they're actually detouring through the neighborhood here. This is like 26th and Ward, kind of like on the just on the side of the Arboretum. And so this is like a small neighborhood street. It's probably not designed for a lot of through traffic. And so one of the things to do is sort of apply some traffic calming in this neighborhood area in order to mitigate the traffic going through and encourage the people to cut over to 23rd and use the arterial. So the way that worked before today was in the AB Streets edit mode, you can click on an individual road and say, okay, right now this is a 25-mile-an-hour road. Let's go ahead and change it to 15, just to slow things down. And so drivers pick the fastest route to their goal. And so if a lot of streets are suddenly slower, more of them will probably choose 23rd. And in real life, this traffic calming measure could be implemented really cheaply with cones and other temporary objects on the road. So before today, I had to individually click on each road and change the speed limit. This is kind of painful. So the thing that I worked on today is a bulk editor. So now there's a mode. There's actually kind of two modes. One of them lets you pick an entire route. So for example, we could select a slice of 23rd Avenue, say all the way up here. And so now this entire, we've selected 17 different roads, and in one shot we can just go change the speed limit if we wanted. And then the other mode that I worked on today was sort of a freehand paint mode. So if you hold a key while you move the mouse around, we can now just select a bunch of roads. And if I make a mistake, I can hold another key and kind of erase them. But yeah, so just this is a much faster way of kind of selecting this whole area and saying, originally it was probably about 25 miles an hour, but let's just go ahead and apply traffic calming to all of this and make it say 15. And so if we try this change out, we can see indeed if people will cut through or not. So it's looking better. It looks like still we have some cross traffic here. Maybe I didn't edit all the roads, or maybe we need to further limit the speed limit. But as you can see, less people are cutting through, and through kind of trial and error, I could figure out why drivers are attempting to choose these routes and kind of make corrections for it. So the other change I worked on today isn't quite done. It's a little bit more complicated, but basically, if you have so some people have trips. The agents in AB Street have trips that begin, usually they go from one building to another, but sometimes they go off map. And so I'm just simulating some small section of Seattle. And so a lot of trips will start somewhere off map, maybe way on the east side, and then come in, and maybe they'll enter the map through the I-90 bridge and then in somewhere here. And so before, the way that I was picking the kind of border intersection along the edge of the map to use, I was just taking the point, somewhere off map, and then finding the closest border just by straight line distance. And this is incredibly unrealistic. And so instead, the other thing that I worked on today was to use a much larger map and do full pathfinding there to find exactly a route that somebody would take. and then take that path and match it to the smaller map and say what border node along the smaller map matches a path in the big route, and use that to have more realistic entry and exit from the map. And I think it's working, but it's causing some issues, and so it's going to take a little bit more work today. Anyway, sorry I can't make the presentation, but thanks so much for watching this, and I hope y'all had fun today. Bye!